Hi. So today we're going to talk about GDP. So GDP. So GDP, or also known as gross domestic product, or I'll say gross domestic product. So it's the market value of the final goods and services produced within a nation in a year. So I said a lot, I'll just break it down. So basically what it is, GDP is, so whatever final goods and services that a nation produces. So let's take USA for example. USA. So let's say, or I'll just make up a country. So let's just say Econ land. So Econ land. Let's say that's our country. So its final goods and services. So like say it only produces cars, okay? And it produced 10 cars. And since this country is very like expensive, like there's not much inflation, let's just say each car is worth $100 or like $1,000. And it produced 10 cars. So to find the GDP or like so GDP is just basically the market value. So what the value of all the goods, like all the final goods and services the country produced in a year. So 10 cars. So let's say Econ Land produced 10 cars in 1 year with each car with its market value at $1,000. So we just multiply 1,000 by 10 and we get $10,000. So $10,000 would be Econ Land's GDP. So it would be Econ Land's GDP. So that would be the GDP of Econ Lands, alright? So what that means is basically we're just talking about what's the value of everything that's produced in a country in a year. That's basically what GDP is. It's very, very simple. So now let's go into a bit more specifics, okay? So first, let's start off with like learning what final goods are. So I said GDP is like all final goods and services, right? Final goods are like, okay, so final goods. Those are all of the goods that are ready for consumption. So ready for consumption. It's what like the goods that are ready to consume. It's like cars. It's just a brand new car that they made, and somebody can immediately buy it right now. So that's what those are. So final goods are ones that are ready for consumption immediately. And then intermediate goods. Let's talk about intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. So what essentially intermediate goods are, I'll just lift off the definition, or they are goods bought from one firm by another firm to use as inputs into the production of final goods and services. So I just said a lot, so let me just explain it very quickly, alright? So intermediate goods basically are bought from, or 1 minute, from firm A from, well actually wait, let me just explain this a bit better. So intermediate goods are uh basically goods that are bought by, so like firm A from, let's say, firm B in order for firm A to produce something else, to produce something. So let's take an example for the Econland example. Just say firm A sells cars in Econland, and firm B is what supplies like the leather in the cars, like the leather for the seats in the cars. So firm B would supply the leather, right? And the leather it's an intermediate good. So we won't count that in the GDP, but it's used as an input to make the car. So right. So now let's talk about what things are not counted in GDP, okay? So first off, so not counted. in GDP. So let's talk about it. So first, second-hand items. So second-hand items, or I'll just say a better way, second-hand sales. So let's take cars for an example again. So say you bought a car in 2014, all right? You can't sell it in now 2025, and even if he does, that doesn't count for GDP. So it has to be brand new for it to count into GDP. So like you can't buy a car from like 20, this can not a car, this can be anything. GDP is for like any item. So it can be something that's like bought like before and you're selling it again to make like some of that money back. It's a second-hand sale because you're selling it for the second time. And so those don't count toward GDP. And the second thing that doesn't count toward GDP is non-market transactions. Non-market transactions. So what are non-market transactions, you may ask? So those are goods or services that are produced by itself that otherwise would have been performed by a firm within the economy. So what I'm saying is like, let's say your car needs cleaning, all right? So if your car like the vacuum needs cleaning, like the floor of the car needs cleaning, right? So you clean it by yourself. You do a cleaning with a vacuum, right? But it's something that you would do, but another company, like another firm, could also do it for you. And those are like non-market transactions. So what you just did won't count toward GDP, like cleaning a car. Like if you spend money on that, like it won't like count toward GDP. And the third is underground sales. Underground sales. So underground sales or illegal sales basically. So it's like illegal like sales of goods or services and like playing someone like cash under the table, like making it unofficial basically. And so four is financial assets. Financial assets. Man, my handwriting it's not that good. Also, what are financial assets, you may ask? So, you might already know, but these include stocks and bonds, and they're not counted because they don't represent the production or like sale of any good or service. It's just like I'll say like a metaphysical way of like holding something. It's like they don't really represent any good, but they're just like worth some money. That's it. And number five are the fifth point that won't count towards GDP is foreign produced goods. So foreign produced. This won't count towards GDP because let's say if you produced an item in like India and then you take that item and then like you take that item to the US, then you can't count that item's value in the United States GDP. You count it for India's GDP. So wherever like that is like the item is produced, that's where it counts for GDP. You can't count foreign made objects for GDP in another country. And number six is intermediate. So I kind of talked about this before, intermediate goods. So these are services or like goods like the leather I was talking about, and they don't count towards GDP because those are not full products that you're making. You're just contributing to a full product that you're gonna make, like the leather in the car. You're just contributing for the car to be made, but you're not making a brand new like leather, like you're not making anything brand new. Just contributing to make something else. Okay, so that's what won't count in GDP. So now let's talk about how we measure GDP. So 1 minute, let me erase this. So, how do we measure GDP, you may ask? So, I'll give you a basic equation right now that we economists, like, not me, but like economists use to calculate GDP, alright? So, it's Y equals C plus I plus G plus X minus I M. So this basically is, so let's say, so Y, it's equal to GDP. So gross domestic product, or GDP. And C is consumption. So consumption. I is investments. Investments. Or okay. Investments. G is government spending. So gov spending. So gov spending. So this is basically X minus IM. X is exports. So it's exports minus the imports that a country makes. So as you know, export is basically exporting, like say, let's take US for example. The US, let's just say the US exports like cars. It exports cars to like another country, like UK or like India. That's exports. They're giving from the US to another country. Import is like buying, like, I don't know, like fruit. Like when you go to the grocery store, you sometimes have fruit that's like from another country. And if you live in the US, you know some fruits are like mangoes. They're like imported from like another country, like Chile or like some other country. And those are imports. You're bringing those in from another country to your country. So let's talk about more about this. So let me just erase this. So take a guess. Let's know. Let's see if you know. Like, take a guess. What do you think is the largest portion of GDP? If you guess private consumption, then you're correct. Consumption, or private consumption, the C over here, that's the big, like the largest, largest portion of GDP. Because consumption, it basically focuses on the spending that an average consumer does in the economy. So like your average spending that you do every day, like Netflix, like groceries, and like going to the mall and like buying stuff like clothes and like other stuff like shoes. Those are consumptions. Cause you're consuming items, like you're buying. Those are private consumptions. Cause you're a private party. You're like a private consumer. So that's the largest portion of GDP. Consumption makes up the largest. And investment in any current spending, or actually, let's just say, uh, so like everything else, like consumption is just larger than everything else, and investments is like spending, like investment includes spending on new productive physical capital, new construction, and the market value of unsold inventories. So basically what it means is like investing in like new construction, like new buildings and like new roadways. Actually, roadways would come against like under government, I would believe. And like it's just basically like investing into like the country, or like investing in, yeah, basically. And then the G stands for government. So gov. Government includes like at all like government at all level purchases like final goods, services, and also invests money in like infrastructures like roads, highways, interstates. So basically what that means is like government spending on like the military, like tanks, guns, or like the interstate, like schools, education, and like hospitals. It's like the spending government does. And exports and imports, we already talked about that. So basically, that's what everything makes up. Like, it's consumer spending, what you, like an average consumer, like you and me, spend an average day, plus, not an average day, but like over the year. And then plus investments from like corporate companies. And then government spending, like all government, like schools, roadways, and infrastructure. And then exports minus imports. So, yeah. It's basically just what like exports and imports, yeah. And so now let's talk about, so there's two different types of GDP. So let me erase this real quick. One type is nominal GDP. So nominal GDP. Nominal GDP is the value of all final goods and services at current prices of that year. So let's say you bought some iPhones, okay? So iPhones are like, let's just say iPhones are like the final goods and services, all right? And in the current year, they're worth $1,000. And let's say you purchase like there's 10 purchase in the whole country, so that would be like $10,000 of iPhones. That would be the country's nominal GDP. So 10 times 1,000, because that's the current like this year price for GDP. So that'd be $10,000. Oh my bad. So that'd be $10,000 for nominal GDP. So nominal GDP would be $10,000 for this example. And let's talk about real GDP next. So real GDP. So real GDP is the value of all final goods and services, but it uses prices from like a base year. So real GDP is very, very important because the prices of goods and services, they're always changing. Because like the prices are always fluctuating and they're always going up because of inflation. And real GDP can be used as a powerful tool to measure inflation because you're using a base year. Well, not in like real GDP takes into account inflation because if you use nominal GDP, if there's a lot of inflation in a country, then it may look like the country's GDP increased over a year. And GDP increasing means the country overall experienced growth. And if the nominal GDP can increase due to inflation, and even if the GDP really increases, inflation could be a major cause, and the country will couldn't be like really growing, but rather it's just inflation that's taking the toll. And real GDP solves that problem a bit. So real GDP uses the base year for the prices. So instead, it just uses one price to calculate everything. So you can see on an average you have a base to calculate on. So you know you this won't take into account inflation. So you know like if a country's growing quick or like falling or like you would know. So like let's say like the base year sometimes like countries take like 1900, like I'm pretty sure America takes something like 1973 or something. I'm not really sure, but yeah, so a base year could be any year. Like, it's like depending on what the country sets as the base year. Like the U.S., I believe uses 1982 to 84 as the base year, but I'm not entirely sure. And it calculates based on that. Like, say, iPhones weren't obviously weren't there. So let's say like 2015, like let's say iPhones were like, for example, are like worth $500 in the base year. Then even if you produce 10, then it would be worth 5,000. So the real GDP would be 5,000. So inflation would count for like half of the value. And if the so yeah, inflation just really changes nominal GDP and it doesn't really change real GDP. And yeah, that's basically what I would say the intro to GDP is. The more advanced stuff is like later to come, I'd say. But let's just do some problems right now. And yeah, I won't give you the answers here, it'll be in the description of the video. So let me just write it down. One sec. So say if this is counted into GDP or not. So like I'll put this on the video and say if these items are counted towards GDP or not. Feel free to pause the video and answer this question. Okay, so once you've done, just look at the description after the video and check your mistakes. If you have any doubt, drop it in the comments and I'll try to answer my best as quickly as possible. So thank you for watching and I hope you learned some information about GDP. See you next time.